Hey guys, it's Shaylin. I'm here today with another episode of Recent Reads. This is the series where I just chat about the last 10 books that I read, although we're doing another extended edition today, and I'm going to be covering 15 books because I was 30 books behind. I'm going to keep the intro pretty short. You can watch any of my other Recent Reads videos for my usual disclaimer, but the condensed version, these are my subjective opinions. I'm not trying to tell you how to feel. Perfectly valid to have completely different feelings on a book than me, and we can both be right about that because reading is influenced by so many personal factors beyond even just taste. It's such a personal thing, and I'm just talking in a very, very informal way about what these books made me feel, my reactions to them, why I personally enjoy them. Starting off, we have Girls Against God by Jenny Hval. This book follows a woman who grew up in a very conservative religious community in Norway. Gets into like weird metal music, witch stuff. So this is the first book in this video that I read as research for my MFA thesis. I don't even know what this book was or how to explain it. This is one of those inexplicable ones. It's like a stream of consciousness floating between different forms. This book is just radical. It's weird. It's spiraling. It's gross. I can't explain it really. Did I always follow it? No. But I enjoyed being along for the ride. And that's what counts. So the next book I read was also for kind of like vibes research for my book. So I picked up In the House in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt, which is like a kind of folkloric style book set in colonial era America about a woman who goes missing or flees into the wilderness and encounters strange, horrific happenings. Unfortunately, this didn't really work for me. This was very confusing, but not in like a cool, fun way. You know, sometimes books are confusing in a way that feels kind of like intentional, and the confusion is part of the effect of the book. This was just confusing in the sense that I was confused about what was happening and where we were frequently throughout the book. You never really feel grounded in a story, a place, or a character. Characters feel really thin, and the story just didn't really grab me at all. I think there's something there to the vibes, and the weird imagery is really exciting. This just didn't come together in a cohesive way. It was confusing, but not in a way that was operating purposefully or was revealing any kind of depth. It was just in a way that to me revealed that the character and plot work felt pretty thin. So the next book I'm really excited to talk about, it's Faun by Brandi George. This is like a really niche book. I was looking for books to read for my research, and I was just going back through my Goodreads, through like 7 years of Goodreads to read ads, and I came across this book which I had added years ago. So this is a combination of play, fiction, and verse. So it's formatted like a play, written like poetry, you read it like a book. The first thing I wrote in my notes was, my hipster ass reading something with 4 ratings on Goodreads, LMAO. So this book begins with a woman experiencing a sexual assault. So she goes into the woods and she encounters a cast of mythic characters of the forest kind of brought to life in a sort of almost like woodsy Greek tragedy. This is a brilliant combination of play, verse, myth, and fiction. The sounds and images are so visceral. This just swept me up in a world unlike anything else that I'd ever read before. I felt so immersed and enamored, and I felt like I was in fairy tale world, but it was also insidious and weird and really incredible. I can't explain it. Like, you just have to read it. I deducted 0.75 stars because of the 40-page long poem that was literally just a list of words in alphabetical order. That really paused the story and pulled me out of the world. It just didn't work for me because it was way too long for what its purpose was in the book. This is only 160 pages long, so 40 pages is a massive section. The rest of the book is so taut and brisk and electric. This just felt like almost like a completely separate entity that to me didn't belong there. This was so good. This was a hidden gem. Okay, so next up we've got The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. We open on a house in the Dutch countryside in the 1960s, and the main character, Isabel, lives there with her brother. It's their family home. She's a very strict, tense woman. She does everything by the book, and her brother brings his new girlfriend. Her name's Eva, to stay in the house. And Eva is the opposite of Isabel. She's loud, she's brash, she's messy, she's unrestrained. The book follows their relationship, but then it kind of cracks open and goes some really unexpected places. The writing is so sleek and polished and punchy. She uses very short sentences and fragments, but also really lush phrasing in combination in a way that's so distinct, so effective. I think, like, her writing is just great. Her style is so clear, unique, and readable. Great atmosphere, intriguing tensions. I was very enamored by this, by the style, by this kind of quiet, looming tension. At points, especially near the end, I just felt this veered a little too much into melodrama or sentimentality for me, and it kind of ruined the delicacy and the subtlety that had been set up. Especially right at the end, I felt like those emotions needed just a lot more time to be worked through on the page. Suddenly, everything felt very melodramatic right at the end there. I feel like the book was at its strongest when it was more emotionally restrained, but I really found this so delightful to read because of the writing style and also the characters, so I'd definitely read more from this author for sure. Like, it's crazy that this is a debut because it's so well written. Okay, so then I read a short story collection, Wild Milk, by Sabrina Orah. This is also one that I found in the depths of my Goodreads to read. So this is a short story collection, and all the stories are kind of like quirky, very short little fables or fairy tales. All the stories here are so clever, they're so strange and curious, and for the most part very like tongue-in-cheek and clever and very playful. There's a very kind of tonal stasis to this piece. Every story is kind of in the exact same mode, the exact same tone, the exact same device. Each piece is so short that there's not really a strong emotional core. The stories start to feel very samey very, very quickly. I think if I encountered any of these pieces in like a literary journal, I'd be very excited and enamored, but reading them all back to back in quick succession, especially when a lot of them are like 1 to 3 pages, just all kind of blurs together. Okay, so then I have The Lamb by Lucy Rose, the literary folk horror, which I love. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and also something that I was hoping I would get some good inspiration for my novel. So this book is set in the English countryside, and the main character, Margot, she lives with her mom, and her mom lures people into the house and kills them, and they eat them. Everything changes when a woman arrives who, you know, they intend to be another stray, another person to kill, but she completely changes the dynamics within the household. This was unhinged, feral, just like I wanted it to be. The ending, if you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. I found the main character, Margot, here. She's very young, she's very tender, she's very complex, very interesting, and the vibes were just impeccable. Folklore, horror, fairy tale girlhood, yes, that's my thing. I think the themes felt way too on the nose, and the middle felt like it was just circling the same plot points for a long time. Like, I think this could have been trimmed a good 30%. If you like literary folk horror with themes of girlhood, which is oddly specific, but like, you'll get it. This is a solid addition to the canon. However, I can't say that it's delivering something groundbreakingly new to the canon that I haven't seen before either. It's a very good execution of these combinations of themes and aesthetics. So I think it stands out more in execution than original. Like, I feel like I've read books like this a lot of times, and this is a solid one. It's not doing something dramatically new, maybe just because I feel like the themes were a little over-explained, but still solid, enjoyable, messed up. So then we have Cecilia by K-Ming Chang. I really enjoy K-Ming Chang's writing. The main character, Seven, works at a chiropractor's office. The book is just her relaying her obsessive relationship with a woman named Cecilia. This kind of was written for me, I fear. The themes here: lesbian eroticism and obsession, predator and prey motifs, animal symbolism, girlhood, desire, and it's a novella. Kind of written for me. Like all of K-Ming Chang's work, this was disgusting and strange and perverse, also tender and delightful and visceral at the same time. She has this very distinct style. I think I could pick out K-Ming Chang's writing better than any other author because her writing style is so distinct, but also in her characters and her stories. Her maximalist style works actually, I think, really well in the novella form. It doesn't overwhelm it so much as it does in a novel. Sometimes, though, I think the clarity is impeded here by the fact that the timelines are constantly crashing into each other. The stream of consciousness style that is just diving into tangent upon tangent upon tangent that take like multiple pages to circle back to the present moment constantly. So this isn't uncommon in her work, but it can be disorienting, that I sometimes feel is maybe disorienting beyond just the intended effect. It's a short book, but I think it's one to read quite slowly. So then I read Gender Theory by Madeline Docherty. This is a second-person novel, which, like, we love. We just follow the main character over a long period of time, starting when she's in college. And she has very intensive friendship with her friend named Ella. So we follow her over a very long period of time. We follow her getting diagnosed with endometriosis and multiple relationships. Unfortunately, I was really underwhelmed by this. The writing is fine. I mean, the second person is like always a fun choice, but I think the style starts to drag and feel monotonous by a third in, because at a certain point, the second person is not enough to keep you interested. It's like she has this really fresh point of view, which at the beginning you're like, oh, hell yeah, it's in second person. But at a certain point, the novelty of that kind of wears off, and then it feels quite stylistically monotone. The main issue I have with this is in the characters. I just did not feel enough development or intrigue from the story or the main character or the main relationship. I needed more. I needed more depth. I needed more complexity. I needed more heat. I needed more nuance. I needed something to make me care more about these people. A book becomes too slice of life, and it can't sustain itself by moving at such fast pace, because we skim over a lot of time through the narrator's life without ever really exploring something meaningful. I love characters who mess up constantly. And here's a character who messes up a lot. But when the character is so thinly defined beneath the surface of their mistakes, we're just moving from failed relationship to failed relationship to failed relationship. And it's like, but why? What am I learning about this character? And this is going to sound mean, but this ends up feeling a bit like a Tumblr post. I think that the depiction of the main character's endometriosis feels like the most well-drawn and impactful part of the story, so I thought that that was really, really well done. But I feel like all the relationships kind of scaffolding that were not well-drawn or interesting enough. Okay, I'm super excited for this next book, Little Scratch by Rebecca Watson. This book is an experimental novel, and it follows one day of a woman's life as she tries to go to work while also processing a sexual assault. This was unlike anything I've ever read. It is a complete stream of consciousness, but not even your standard stream of consciousness. It's formatted in like all these overlapping columns are constantly changing. It literally doesn't read like anything else that I've ever seen. The stream of consciousness is incredibly effective, and it's an amazing example of experimental writing that feels more realistic than normal writing. A lot of the time, actually, when we talk about experimental writing, goal of experimental writing is actually to be more realistic than traditional writing. Traditional writing just has these norms that we've accepted, and so they feel very unobtrusive, but they're not actually realistic. They're not actually how life works. So sometimes with experimental fiction, we're trying to be more realistic. And this is a perfect example of this, because this actually looks and reads on the page like an internal narrative, where it's not a linear, sequential string of thoughts like in traditional prose. It's 5 different things overlapping and happening all at once. Writing is a sequential medium. We can only have one thing happen at a time, right? Like if a character is hearing something at the same time as they see something, at the same time as they say something, we then have to sequence it. We can only experience one thing at a time. Life is a simultaneous medium, but writing is a sequential one. This gets past this and makes the writing simultaneous. It's a little maddening to read, but in a good way. It's claustrophobic, it's loud, it's chaotic, and it's brilliant. It may be challenging to read, but I think with challenging subject matter, maybe warrants a need for challenging form to do that challenging subject matter justice. Even in the most organic feeling traditional writing, it still isn't as realistic as something like this, because this is quite literally like a download of how someone thinks. It asks you to read slowly. It asks you to make a lot of choices as a reader in terms of what order you're going to read things. It asks you to take in words in a way you've never taken in words before. I'm still quite wowed by it. Okay, so next up we have Smothermoss by Alisa Alering, also a book I read for some vibes research for my book. So this book is set in 1980s Appalachia, and we follow 2 sisters, older sister Sheila and younger sister Angie, and they're both quite strange girls, especially Angie, who is like obsessed with nuclear war and preparing for a potential Russian invasion. And then there's a brutal murder that happens in the woods where they live. The characters here were really great, fascinating teenage characters with a very interesting sibling relationship. They both felt like really fresh, interesting, strange, original characters. Angie being so weird and unnerving, but kind of endearing in that sense. And then Sheila being a more tender character who still felt very original and who I think I found very sweet on a level of like older sister grappling with queer identity. Very atmospheric, very richly imagined with a lot of very original, fresh ideas and motifs. Eerie imagery and language throughout that pulls a lot of weight. I think I was much more interested in the sister relationship and their family than I was the murder mystery. The murder mystery to me was kind of lacking. It was trying to be the main propulsion of the book. I think it kind of failed to keep up enough fuel, in my opinion. It kind of feels a bit like a engine sputtering, running out of gas, especially in the later parts. But the sister relationship I thought was the heart and was really effective and well drawn. So now we've got a short story collection, A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez, translated from Spanish by Megan McDowell. You guys know I love Mariana Enriquez. Our Share of Night is one of my favorite novels ever, one of my favorite novels of the past few years. I cannot shut up about it. This is her most recent release, and it's a short story collection. The third collection of hers that I've read. Our Share of Night is by far my favorite of her book. Like all her stories, this is set in a gothic, brutal world where society is steeped in violence and explores how that might overflow or manifest into the supernatural. The characters are all accustomed to violence, though go to varying lengths to escape it, or at least not look at it in their personal lives until it's impossible to not look at anymore because it's going to break through in a supernatural manner. This is actually my favorite of her collections because I think it has the richest character work. These stories feel a little more slowed down and more rooted in character, which to me made the tension and terror of waiting to see when the violence would spill over even more heightened than in her other two collections. Okay, so then we have one of my favorite books from this video for sure, Penance by Eliza Clark. This is a fictional true crime, so it's written in the form of a non-fiction novel. We have a fictional author, Alec Corelli, who's writing the book. He's writing this true crime book about a murder that happened in a small town on the English seaside where 3 teenage girls killed a classmate by setting her on fire. And so the book unfolds in sections starting with Joan, the victim, each of the 3 perpetrators, as well as one section about a girl who knew them and was originally also arrested for the crime but later proven innocent. This is the most gripped I have been by a book in ages. We get different forms of testimonials, and we also get excerpts from their Tumblr blogs and stuff so well to actually give you a feeling of reading a true crime book, found footage, all these different sources. It really has that gritty realism to it, and it gives you that without actually having to read true crime, which personally I find too disturbing, and so I do not consume. This captured the insanity of being a teenage girl so realistically, maybe among the most realistically I've ever seen. The characters were also complicated and strange, but also so realistic. We've all known a Joni, we've all known a Violet, we've all known an Angelica, we've all known a Dolly, even if it didn't escalate to murder. We've kind of all known these characters, but yet they still feel distinct and not like types. Also, this captured mid-2010s Tumblr culture and online subcultures in such a viscerally accurate way. I was wheezing at the accuracy of the interactions these girls were having on Tumblr. Very layered and intricate narrative happening, puzzled together in a very unique and fascinating way. I think the metafictional approach here is brilliant and intricate and morally layered and morally engaging. The nonfiction presentation creates layers of truth, unreliability, and mistrust that are fascinating. Is an effect you normally can't get from fiction. Because normally in fiction it's this happened and you trust that it happened, or you have an unreliable narrator. Whereas here we have fictional events packaged as a in-world fictional text with so many in-world fictional sources. And so it's not oh, I can trust this or I can't. It's I can never actually know the truth of what happened, because just like in real life, everyone has their own version of truth, and there's just at a certain point no way to know what is real. This was just a whole new form of unreliable narrator that I think pushed the device to really interesting heights. Everything feels jarringly realistic due to the true crime presentation. The lore here the lore goes crazy in a way that I feel is very hard to create in fiction. The splinters of lore that she had to create for this, I think she also situates the made-up stuff within enough real-world context right up against it that the fictional just kind of slips right into the real. Okay, so then we have Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. This is another actually fictional nonfiction. It's a fictional biography. The main character, CM, is married to this like famous mysterious artist named X, and when X dies, CM then goes on this journey to write this biography about her and learn the truth about her, and kind of learns that her wife was a much more complicated figure than she'd realized. It's also set in like an alternate reality where post-World War II, the US split into like multiple countries, and one of them, the South, was a fascist theocracy. This is a very intricate novel with a lot of layers. There's a lot of very careful, intricate interweaving of both the fabricated and the real world to create something that is kind of an uncanny mix of both. It's like the opposite of Penance, where the mixture of the real and the invented is woven together in a way that is so seamless that it feels hyper real, whereas here, the friction there feels like uncanny. X is certainly a fascinating character as well, and this way of writing about her without the book being about her is a really interesting choice. This might be personal taste, but I really wanted more about X and the narrator's relationship. To me, that was the heart of the book, and the removed biographic feel did get a little dull at points because it wasn't engaging with what to me was the emotional core of the book. So then I read Supplication by Nour Abi-Nakhoul. This is like a horror. It begins with the main character waking up in a mysterious basement. It spirals from there. On one hand, there's some incredible sentences, incredible paragraphs. Beautiful, jarring, strange. Out of context, they work, they're stunning. However, this book is so confusing. Like, you almost instantly and constantly lose track of where you are, even with very close reading. Situations and people just continually emerge and pop up out of nowhere. You never feel grounded. On one hand, the effect is disorienting. There's a terror and a pressure that is conveyed with that. But the story is not conveyed with clarity at all. So I leave this one unrated. Okay, so the final book we have here is Even As We Breathe by Annette Saunooke Clapsaddle. So the main character of this book, County, is a Cherokee teenager, and he really wants to escape his hometown, which is called Cherokee. And so he gets this job working at a resort, which is, the book is set during World War II, functioning as a POW camp. And so he goes with a friend of his named Essie, who he is kind of in love with. Great voice, really close first person that feels both polished and really close and conversational at the same time. So I felt immediately close to and invested in the protagonist. Felt really real to me. I think Essie, the initial most important side character, also very interesting. There's just lots of promise of their dynamic, especially in this setting, right? Like, what an interesting piece of history to explore for these characters. This set course on an interesting track right out of the gate, and then did not stick to it, unfortunately. It didn't really engage much with its core concept. You know, I thought this concept of like two Indigenous youth working at a resort turned POW camp during World War II was fascinating. Like, what an interesting premise for a historical fiction work. Instead, it kept introducing new directions to the story, but then not sticking to them. So everything just ended up feeling a little half-baked in the end, or non-cohesive. And the relationship with Essie disappeared mid-book and then kind of came back for a quick resolution. That's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, let me know what you've been reading lately, if you've loved anything, if you've hated anything. It's always a safe place to complain in my comment sections. Sometimes you gotta get it off your chest. But if you have any books you've really been loving, of course, let me know. So that's all for this video, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!